Lucas Bennett stood in Victoria Hale's driveway at midnight, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles had gone white. The most powerful woman in Nashville sat beside him trembling, not from fear, but from the chemotherapy coursing through her veins. Then she said 5 words that would shatter everything he thought he knew about survival. Be my husband, not for love. This is the story of a broken single father, a CEO who controlled billions but couldn't control her own body, and the impossible decision that changed them both forever. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The elevator doors slid open on the 14th floor of Aldridge Capitol at exactly 6:47 a.m., and Lucas Bennett stepped into the kind of silence that only exists before the world wakes up. His dress shoes clicked against marble floors, still wet from the overnight cleaning crew, and he carried his coffee in one hand and his daughter's drawing in the other. A crayon masterpiece of 3 stick figures holding hands that she'd pressed into his palm that morning with fierce insistence. "That's us now, Daddy," Mia had said, her 6-year-old voice carrying the absolute certainty that only children possess. "You, me, and whoever comes next." He'd folded the paper carefully and slipped it into his briefcase without correcting her, because there wouldn't be anyone next. The divorce had been finalized 47 days ago. Lucas had stopped counting after the first month, then started again when he realized the numbers were the only thing keeping him anchored. 47 days since Judge Morrison signed the papers without once meeting his eyes. 47 days since Rebecca walked out of the courthouse with her lawyer and her new life, and the kind of freedom Lucas couldn't afford to want. She'd kept the house, he'd kept Mia. Some trades weren't fair, some were just final. His office sat in the northeast corner of the floor, a glass-walled box that offered a view of downtown Nashville, waking up in shades of amber and steel. Lucas set his coffee down, smoothed out Mia's drawing on his desk, and booted up his computer to face the same financial projections he'd been wrestling with for 3 weeks straight. The Meridian account. $18 million in restructured assets, a client who changed his mind every 48 hours, and a deadline that was now 6 days away. "You're here early." Lucas didn't jump. He'd learned months ago that Victoria Hale moved through spaces like weather, inevitable, impossible to predict, and always exactly where she needed to be. She stood in his doorway, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that suggested control without effort, and her eyes, sharp, gray, unreadable, swept across his desk and landed on the crayon drawing. Her expression didn't change, but something softened in the set of her shoulders. "Mia's work?" Victoria asked. "She's convinced I need help decorating." "She's not wrong." Victoria stepped into his office and Lucas caught the faint scent of her perfume, something expensive and understated that disappeared the moment you tried to name it. "The Meridian client called my personal line at 11 last night." Lucas's stomach dropped. "I can explain. He wanted to tell me you'd talked him off a ledge." Victoria's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Said you spent 90 minutes on the phone explaining capital gains implications like you were teaching a graduate seminar. He's signing. Monday morning." The relief hit Lucas so hard he had to sit down. "I didn't know he'd called you," he managed. "He calls me about everything, usually to complain." Victoria picked up Mia's drawing, studied it with the same intensity she applied to quarterly reports. "This time he called to tell me I'd be an idiot to ever let you go." She set the drawing down carefully, precisely, exactly where she'd found it. "Don't make me an idiot, Lucas." Then she was gone, heels clicking down the hallway toward her corner office, leaving Lucas alone with his coffee and the uncomfortable realization that Victoria Hale had just delivered what passed for high praise in her carefully measured world. He'd been working at Aldridge Capitol for 4 years, long enough to understand that Victoria didn't do compliments. She did evaluations, she did expectations, she did consequences delivered with surgical precision, but she didn't do sympathy, which was exactly why on his second day back after the divorce, when she'd noticed his bare ring finger and said simply, "I'm sorry, Lucas," before handing him the Caldwell portfolio, the firm's most demanding, high-stakes, career-making nightmare of an account, he hadn't broken down. He'd said thank you. Because sympathy was quicksand. Sympathy meant people saw you as fragile, temporary, someone to handle carefully until you either recovered or resigned. Responsibility was oxygen, Responsibility meant Victoria saw him as capable, and capability, Lucas had learned, was the only currency that mattered when everything else had been taken away. The morning disintegrated into back-to-back calls. Tokyo at 7, London at 9. A conference with the legal team at 10:30 that ran 40 minutes long and solved exactly nothing. Lucas ate lunch at his desk, a protein bar and coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, while reviewing acquisition projections that didn't quite add up. His phone buzzed at 2:17 p.m. Mia's school. Caller ID. His heart performed a gymnastics routine. Mr. Bennett, this is Susan from Westridge Elementary. Everything's fine. Where's Mia? She's in the office with me and she's perfectly safe, but she's running a slight fever and complaining of a stomachache. We need you to come pick her up. Lucas was already grabbing his jacket. 20 minutes. He made it in 14. Mia sat in the school office with her backpack on her lap and her pink sneakers swinging 3 inches above the floor. Her face was flushed, her eyes too bright, and when she saw Lucas, she burst into tears. Hey, baby girl! Lucas crouched in front of her, one hand on her knee, the other brushing damp hair off her forehead. What's going on? My tummy hurts, she whispered, and I miss Mommy. The second part landed harder than the first. I know. Lucas kept his voice steady, kept his face calm, kept everything together because that's what fathers did. Let's get you home, okay? We'll have soup and watch a movie, and you'll feel better. Susan handed him a folder of schoolwork and offered a sympathetic smile that Lucas didn't have the bandwidth to acknowledge. He signed Mia out, carried her to the car even though she insisted she could walk, and drove home with one hand on the wheel and the other holding hers. Home was a 2-bedroom apartment in East Nashville that still smelled like paint and new carpet. Lucas had signed the lease the day after the divorce was finalized, had moved in with a mattress, a coffee maker, and the kind of determined optimism that only survived because he couldn't afford to let it die. Mia's room had purple walls and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. His room had a bed and a single-framed photo of Mia on the nightstand. Rebecca wasn't in any of the pictures. Not because he was angry, because looking at her face reminded him of everything he'd failed to be. Couch or bed? Lucas asked as they walked inside. Couch, Mia mumbled. Can we watch the one with the princess and the frog? We can watch anything you want. He settled her on the couch with a blanket and a bowl of chicken soup from a can. The movie started, and Mia's head drooped against his shoulder within 10 minutes. Lucas checked her forehead, still warm, but not dangerously so, and let her sleep. His laptop sat on the coffee table, still open to the Meridian projections. His phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from the office, and Lucas sat there in the dim light of an animated movie he'd seen 17 times, his daughter sleeping against his chest, and wondered when exactly he'd stopped being a person and become a function. Father, employee, problem solver. Never just Lucas. Mia woke up at 6:30, groggy and cranky, insisting she felt fine and demanding macaroni and cheese. Lucas made it from a box, watched her eat half, and declare herself full, then negotiated a bath that turned into a 20-minute rubber duck theater production. By the time she was in bed, freshly scrubbed, pajama-clad, and clutching the stuffed elephant her mother had given her last Christmas, Lucas was running on fumes and willpower. Daddy? Mia's voice was small in the dark. Yeah, baby? Do you think Mommy misses me? Lucas sat on the edge of her bed, one hand smoothing the blanket over her small form. The question wasn't new. She asked some version of it every week, and every week Lucas had to choose between honesty and kindness. He chose kindness. I think she misses you every single day. Then why doesn't she come see me more? Because your mother is building a new life with someone who isn't me, and you're a reminder of everything she left behind. Lucas didn't say that. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings, he said instead. But that doesn't mean they don't love you. You know that, right? Mia nodded, but her eyes were wet. Lucas leaned down and kissed her forehead. Get some sleep, okay? If you still feel bad tomorrow, you can stay home and we'll have a pajama day. With pancakes? With pancakes. She smiled, and it felt like winning. Nah. Lucas didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table until midnight, working through projections and client reports, and the kind of detail-oriented busy work that kept his brain occupied and his heart numb. The apartment was too quiet. The walls were too clean. Everything was temporary and functional, and nothing felt like home. His phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. Victoria Hale. Lucas stared at the screen. In 4 years, she'd never called him after hours, never texted, never crossed the professional boundary she'd built around herself like a fortress. He answered on the third ring. Bennett. Lucas. Her voice sounded wrong, tight, controlled in the way that meant control was costing her. I need a favor. Of course. What do you need? A pause. Long enough that Lucas thought the call had dropped. Can you cover the Tokyo meeting tomorrow morning? 6 a.m. call. I'll send you the brief tonight. Absolutely. Are you... He stopped himself. You didn't ask Victoria Hale if she was okay. Is there anything else I can handle? No, just Tokyo. Another pause. Thank you, Lucas. She hung up before he could respond. Lucas sat there staring at his phone, a strange unease settling in his chest. Victoria didn't delegate. She didn't ask for favors. She didn't sound uncertain. Something was wrong. Bolted. The Tokyo call went smoothly. Lucas presented the quarterly projections with the same precision Victoria would have demanded, fielded questions about market volatility, and closed with a confidence he didn't entirely feel but had learned to fake convincingly. When he walked into the office at 8:30, Victoria's door was closed. It stayed closed all day. At 4 p.m., her assistant, a terrifyingly competent woman named Diane, who'd been with Victoria for a decade, caught Lucas in the hallway. She's asking for you. Lucas didn't ask questions. He knocked once and entered. Victoria's office was a study in controlled elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk that could seat 8 for dinner, art on the walls that Lucas suspected was worth more than his car. Everything in its place. Everything deliberate. Victoria stood by this window, her back to him, one hand pressed against the glass. Close the door. Lucas did. The Tokyo call went well, she said, without turning around. Tanaka was impressed. I had good material to work with. You're being modest. Stop it. She turned, and Lucas saw what he'd missed on the phone. The tightness around her eyes, the careful way she held herself, the exhaustion she was burning energy to hide. Are you okay? He asked before he could stop himself. No. The word was delivered with the same precision she used for everything else. But I will be. She moved to her desk, sat down with the kind of deliberate control that suggested standing had become complicated, and folded her hands in front of her. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Lucas nodded. 3 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with early-stage cancer. Ovarian, caught early. Treatment plan is aggressive, but statistically favorable. She delivered the information like a quarterly report. Facts, figures, probabilities. I've scheduled surgery for next month and chemotherapy to follow. My oncologist is excellent. My prognosis is good. Lucas's world tilted. Victoria, I said no interrupting. Her voice was sharp, but her hands trembled. I'm telling you because I need someone in this firm who knows. Diane knows. My lawyer knows. And now you know. I'm not announcing it. I'm not explaining it to the board. I'm handling it the same way I handle everything else. Privately, precisely, and on my own terms. You shouldn't have to do this alone. I've done everything alone. She met his eyes, and for the first time in 4 years, Lucas saw past the armor. I built this firm alone. I rebuilt it after the crash alone. I buried my mother alone. Being alone is a choice I made a long time ago, and it's worked perfectly well. Then why are you telling me? The question hung between them. Victoria looked away first. Because I need someone to cover my Thursday meetings for the next 3 months, she said quietly. And because you're the only person in this building I trust not to treat me like I'm dying. Are you? No. The word was absolute. I'm inconvenienced. Despite everything, Lucas almost smiled. Thursday came with the weight of a countdown. Lucas rearranged his entire morning, dropped Mia at school early, called in a favor from his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to handle pickup, and cleared his calendar with the kind of surgical efficiency Victoria would have appreciated. At 10 a.m., he sat in the waiting room of Vanderbilt's Oncology Center, pretending to read financial reports while nurses called names and patients shuffled past with IV poles and tired eyes. At 10:47, Victoria emerged. She looked exactly the same, immaculate suit, perfect posture, expression that gave away nothing, except her hands were shaking. "Ready?" Lucas asked. "I've been ready for an hour. They run late." He didn't argue, just walked beside her to the parking garage, opened the passenger door of his car, and waited while she settled in with the kind of careful movements that suggested her body was betraying her in small, furious ways. They didn't talk on the drive to her house in Green Hills. Victoria stared out the window, one hand pressed against the glass, and Lucas drove with the same quiet competence he'd learned as a father, steady, reliable, there. Her house was a modern architectural statement tucked into 2 acres of privacy, all clean lines and enormous windows, and the kind of beautiful emptiness that suggested no one actually lived there. Lucas pulled into the circular driveway and put the car in park. Victoria didn't move. "Do you need help inside?" he asked carefully. "No?" She closed her eyes. "I need 5 minutes." So Lucas waited. The medication made her nauseous, she'd explained earlier that week, made her dizzy, made her feel like her body was something happening to her instead of something she controlled. Control was everything to Victoria Hale. Losing it was unbearable. "My mother died of cancer," she said suddenly. "Pancreatic. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. She refused treatment, said she'd lived her life on her terms, and she'd die the same way." Lucas stayed quiet. "She died alone in a hospice facility in Tampa. I was in Singapore closing a deal. By the time I got back, she'd been gone for 3 days." Victoria opened her eyes. "I told myself it was her choice, that she wanted it that way, that I honored her wishes by not disrupting my life to watch her disappear." Her voice cracked on the last word. "But the truth is, I wasn't there because I was terrified, because I didn't know how to be the daughter of a dying woman. I only knew how to be the CEO who had everything under control." She turned to look at him, and her eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. "I don't want to die alone, Lucas." "You're not going to die. Everyone dies. Not today." He said it with the same certainty Mia used when she declared the sky was blue or cookies were the best food. "Not for a long time. And when that day comes, decades from now, you won't be alone. I promise." Victoria studied him for a long moment. Then she opened the car door and walked inside without another word. But they fell into a rhythm. Every Thursday at 10 a.m., Lucas sat in that waiting room. Every Thursday at noon, he drove Victoria home in silence. Every Thursday evening, his phone buzzed with a single text. "Thank you." He never asked if she needed anything else. She never offered. At work, nothing changed. Victoria still ran boardrooms with ruthless efficiency, still demolished unprepared analysts, still expected perfection and accepted nothing less. But sometimes, late at night when the office was empty, Lucas would pass her door and see her silhouette against the window, small, solitary, human. Mia asked about her once. "Is Miss Victoria sick?" Lucas had mentioned her exactly twice, once when explaining why he'd be late on Thursdays, once when Mia saw him putting Victoria's favorite tea, green, no sugar, into his bag. "She's getting better," Lucas said carefully. "But she needs help right now." "Like when I had the flu and you stayed home with me." "Exactly like that." Mia considered this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult problems. "You're a good friend, Daddy." Lucas wasn't sure friend was the right word, but he didn't have a better one. The 5th Thursday arrived with winter creeping into Nashville. Treatment had been harder that morning. Victoria's oncologist had adjusted the dosage, something about blood counts and tolerance levels that Lucas didn't understand but recognized as serious. When she came out of the infusion room, her face was gray. She made it to the car, made it through the 20-minute drive, made it into her driveway before she grabbed the door handle and stopped moving. "Victoria? I'm fine." Her voice was thread-thin. "I just need a moment." Lucas put the car in park and waited. 1 minute became 2. 2 became 5. The sun was setting, painting her house in shades of amber and shadow, and Victoria Hale, the woman who controlled hundreds of millions of dollars with a single phone call, sat trembling in his passenger seat, unable to move. "Let me help you inside," Lucas said gently. "I don't need help." "I know you don't. Let me help you anyway." Something in her resistance crumbled. Lucas got out, walked around to her side, and opened the door. Victoria took his offered hand, her fingers were ice cold, and let him guide her out of the car and up the front steps. Inside, the house was exactly as empty as it looked from outside. Expensive furniture arranged with architectural precision. Kitchen that had never seen a home-cooked meal. Living room that had never heard laughter. Lucas got her settled on the couch with a blanket and a glass of water she didn't drink. "I should go," he said. "But call me if you need anything. I mean it." "Lucas." He stopped. Victoria looked up at him, and in the fading light she looked impossibly young and impossibly tired. "Stay," she whispered, "just for a few minutes." So he sat in the chair across from her and stayed while the sun disappeared and the room filled with shadows, and Victoria Hale, finally closed her eyes and let herself be fragile. His phone buzzed at 6:30. "Mrs. Chen, Mia's asking for you. All good here, but she wants to say goodnight." Lucas stepped into the kitchen to call. "Hi, Daddy." Mia's voice was bright, cheerful, alive. "Hi, baby girl. How was your day?" She launched into a detailed account of recess and art class, and how Tommy Chen had shared his cookies even though she'd forgotten her snack. Lucas listened with half his attention on his daughter and half on the woman sleeping in the next room. "When are you coming home?" Mia asked. "Soon, baby. I just need to make sure Miss Victoria is okay first." "Is she getting better?" "Yeah, she's getting better." "Good. Tell her I said feel better." "I will. Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Mia. More than anything." He hung up and found Victoria awake, watching him from the couch. "She sounds like you," Victoria said. "Certain about everything." Lucas smiled. "She got that from her mother." Doubtful. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Victoria sat up slowly, testing her body's willingness to cooperate. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to think about it carefully before you answer." Lucas waited. Victoria took a breath, held it, released it with the same control she applied to everything. "Be my husband." The words landed like a physical thing. Lucas stared at her. "Not romance," Victoria continued, her voice steady now, deliberate. "Not love. Not any of the things people usually mean when they say that. I mean partnership, legal, binding, practical partnership." "Victoria, listen." She leaned forward, and her eyes were clear, focused, absolutely serious. "I have excellent insurance, but if something goes wrong, if the treatment doesn't work, if I need long-term care, if I become incapacitated, I have no one, no family, no emergency contact besides Diane, no one who can make medical decisions or handle my affairs or just show up." Lucas's throat was tight. "And you're a single father with a child who depends entirely on you," Victoria continued. "If something happens to you, what happens to Mia? Who takes care of her? Who makes sure she's safe? My sister lives in Portland with 3 kids of her own. I looked into it." Victoria's expression was unapologetic. "I'm not proposing marriage because I'm lonely or desperate or afraid. I'm proposing a practical solution to mutual vulnerability. You need stability. I need someone who shows up. We trust each other. We work well together. And neither of us is interested in pretending this is something it isn't." The proposal hung between them like a business deal, which, Lucas realized, was exactly what it was. "I can't ask you to do this," he said. "You're not asking. I am." "You don't love me." "I trust you. In my experience, that's more reliable." Victoria's voice softened. "And before you say it, yes, I've thought about this. Yes, I understand what I'm asking. Yes, I know it sounds insane, but I've spent my entire life making calculated decisions, and this is the most calculated one I've ever made." Lucas stood and walked to the window. Outside, Nashville glittered in the dark, a city full of people living normal lives with normal problems. This wasn't normal. This was impossible. "What about Mia?" he asked quietly. "What about her? How do I explain this to my 6-year-old daughter? The same way you explain everything else. Honestly. Age appropriately. with the understanding that she'll adapt because children are more resilient than we give them credit for. Lucas turned to face her. And what happens when you're better? When the treatment works and you don't need someone to drive you home anymore? Victoria met his eyes. Then we decide together, like partners. The weight of it was overwhelming. A marriage built on logistics and medical paperwork, and the kind of desperate practicality that only made sense when your life had already fallen apart once. I need time to think, Lucas said. Take all the time you need. Victoria stood carefully, moved to her desk, and pulled out a folder. I had my lawyer draw up papers. Prenuptial agreement, clear financial boundaries, custody arrangements if something happens to you, medical power of attorney. Everything spelled out so there are no surprises. She handed him the folder. Read it, think about it, and when you have an answer, call me. Lucas took the folder and walked toward the door. Lucas? He stopped. Victoria's voice was quiet, almost tentative. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to stand with me. There's a difference. Lucas nodded because he didn't trust his voice. Then he drove home through a city that suddenly felt foreign, carrying a folder full of legal documents that proposed the most practical, impossible, utterly insane solution he'd ever encountered. And somewhere in the space between Thursday night and Friday morning, Lucas Bennett started to believe that maybe, just maybe, the most broken version of himself was exactly what Victoria Hale needed. Not because she was dying, but because she'd finally found someone willing to stay. The folder sat on Lucas's kitchen table for 3 days like a live grenade. He didn't open it Friday night. Couldn't. Just set it down next to the stack of unpaid bills and Mia's homework and pretended it wasn't there while he made dinner and supervised bath time and read the same bedtime story he'd read 100 times before. Saturday morning, Mia had a soccer game. Lucas stood on the sideline with the other parents, cheering at appropriate moments, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere in a Green Hills mansion where Victoria Hale had looked him in the eye and proposed the most clinical marriage in human history. Daddy, did you see? Did you see my goal? Lucas blinked back to reality. Mia was running toward him, grass-stained and glowing, and he'd missed it. Missed the one moment she'd been working toward all season. I saw it, baby, he lied, and hated himself for it. You were amazing. She beamed anyway, because 6-year-olds still believed their fathers were infallible. Saturday night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas finally opened the folder. The prenuptial agreement was 47 pages of legal language that boiled down to a simple premise. Victoria kept everything she'd built, Lucas kept everything he'd brought into it, and neither had claim to the other's assets. Clean, transactional, impossible to misinterpret. The custody arrangements were more complex. If something happened to Lucas, Victoria would become Mia's legal guardian. If something happened to both of them, Lucas's sister in Portland would take custody, with a trust fund established to cover all expenses until Mia turned 18. Medical power of attorney went both ways. If Victoria became incapacitated, Lucas made decisions. If Lucas ended up unconscious in a hospital, Victoria did the same. It was the most thorough, least romantic marriage proposal ever committed to paper, and it made perfect sense. Lucas sat at that kitchen table until 2 a.m, reading legal clauses and trying to imagine explaining this to Mia, to his sister, to the confused faces at Aldridge Capital when their CEO married a junior portfolio manager nobody had ever heard of. His phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. Victoria, you don't have to answer now, or ever. I meant what I said, no pressure. Lucas stared at the message. She was awake too then, probably sitting in that empty house, waiting for an answer she claimed she didn't need. He typed 3 different responses and deleted them all. Finally, he sent, I'm reading the agreement. It's thorough. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Victoria, my lawyer is expensive. I make her earn it. Despite everything, Lucas smiled. Lucas, when do you need an answer? Victoria, there's no deadline. Take whatever time you need. Lucas, what if I say no? The dots appeared and stayed there for almost a minute. Victoria, then nothing changes. We're colleagues. I handle my situation, you handle yours, and we continue exactly as we are. Lucas, and if I say yes? Another long pause. Victoria. Then we figure it out together. Lucas set his phone down and looked at the folder, at the contracts and clauses and carefully negotiated boundaries. At the most practical, impossible solution to problems he hadn't known how to solve. He thought about Mia asking what would happen if something happened to him. He thought about Victoria sitting alone in a chemotherapy chair, managing cancer the same way she managed quarterly earnings. He thought about standing in a courthouse 47 days ago, watching 9 years of marriage dissolve into signatures. And he thought about the difference between love and partnership, between romance and showing up, between the fairy tale version of marriage and the brutal, practical reality of two people choosing to face the world together because alone was too damn hard. Sunday morning arrived with cold rain and the kind of gray that made Nashville look like a charcoal sketch. Lucas made pancakes while Mia sat at the table drawing another masterpiece. This time, a house with 4 windows and a rainbow that defied meteorological possibility. "Daddy?" she asked through a mouthful of syrup. "Can Miss Victoria come have pancakes with us sometime?" Lucas flipped a pancake he immediately forgot about. "Why do you ask?" "Because you talk about her a lot. And you get that look." "What look?" Mia scrunched up her face in concentration. "The thinking look. The one you get when you're trying to solve hard problems." Lucas rescued the burning pancake and slid it onto her plate. "Miss Victoria she's going through something difficult right now. I'm trying to help her." "Is she sad?" "Sometimes." "Yeah. Then she should definitely have pancakes with us. Pancakes make everyone feel better." The wisdom of children was occasionally devastating. "Maybe soon," Lucas said. Mia nodded, satisfied, and returned to her drawing. Lucas pulled out his phone and typed before he could overthink it. "Lucas, are you free for breakfast? Mia wants to meet you properly." The response came faster than he expected. "Victoria, when?" Lucas, "Now? We have pancakes." Victoria, "I don't eat breakfast." Lucas, "You do today." Another pause, longer this time. Victoria, "Address?" Lucas sent it and immediately regretted everything. Victoria Hale didn't do spontaneous Sunday pancakes. She did scheduled meetings and advanced planning in controlled environments. But 37 minutes later, there was a knock on his apartment door. Victoria stood in the hallway wearing jeans, actual jeans, like a normal person, and a gray sweater that looked expensive but understated. Her hair was down. Lucas had never seen her hair down. "Hi," he said stupidly. "Hi." She looked past him into the apartment, taking in the modest space with the same analytical gaze she applied to everything. "This is where you live." "This is where we live." Lucas stepped aside. "Come in." Mia appeared in the hallway, curiosity overriding shyness. "Are you Miss Victoria?" "I am." Victoria crouched down to Mia's eye level with surprising ease. "And you're Mia. Your father talks about you constantly." "He talks about you too." "Does he?" "He says you're very smart and very brave and that you need help being less lonely." Lucas nearly died on the spot, but Victoria's expression softened in a way he'd never seen. "Your father is very kind, and possibly too honest with 6-year-olds. "I'm almost 7, Mia corrected. "And Daddy says honesty is important." "Your father is right about that too." They held each other's gaze for a moment, the powerful CEO and the small child, and something passed between them that Lucas couldn't name but recognized as significant. Then Mia grabbed Victoria's hand. "Come see my room. I have glow-in-the-dark stars." Victoria let herself be pulled down the hallway, and Lucas followed, completely derailed by the surreal image of his boss admiring construction paper artwork and nodding seriously at Mia's explanation of why purple was the best color. Breakfast was chaos in the best way. Mia dominated the conversation, asking Victoria questions that ranged from, "Do you like dinosaurs?" to, "Why don't you have any kids?" with the tactless directness only children could manage. Victoria answered every question honestly. Yes, she liked dinosaurs, specifically velociraptors. No, she didn't have children because she'd focused on building her career. Yes, she thought pink sneakers were an excellent choice. No, she'd never seen the movie about the princess and the frog, but it sounded interesting. Lucas watched them interact and felt something shift in his chest. Something that had nothing to do with legal agreements and everything to do with the way Victoria listened to Mia like she was the most important person in the room. After breakfast, Mia announced she needed to finish her drawing and disappeared into her room, leaving Lucas and Victoria alone at the kitchen table with cold coffee and syrup-sticky plates. "She's wonderful," Victoria said quietly. "She is. You've done an incredible job with her. I'm figuring it out as I go." Victoria traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger. "When I was drawing up those papers, I kept thinking about what would happen if you said yes, what it would actually look like, and I realized I don't have any frame of reference for this." "For what?" "For being part of someone's life, someone's real, messy, complicated life." She looked up at him. "I know how to run a company. I know how to negotiate deals and manage portfolios and make decisions that affect hundreds of people. But I don't know how to have Sunday pancakes with a 6-year-old and her father." Lucas reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "You just did it, and you were perfect." "I wasn't." "Victoria." He waited until she met his eyes. "You talked to Mia about velociraptors and purple walls, and you didn't once check your phone or look uncomfortable or act like you wanted to be anywhere else. That's not perfect. That's better. That's real." Her hand turned under his, palm to palm. "I want to say yes," Lucas said, "to your proposal, to the partnership, to all of it." Victoria went very still. "But I need to know something first," he continued. "This arrangement, is it just logistics? Just paperwork and emergency contacts and covering our bases? What else would it be?" "I don't know. That's what I'm asking." Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she pulled her hand back, not in rejection, but in the gathering of thoughts. "When my mother died," she said slowly, "I promised myself I'd never need anyone. That I'd build a life so complete, so successful, so absolutely under my control that vulnerability would be irrelevant." She looked at him. "And I did. I built exactly that life. And then I got sick, and I realized that all I'd really built was a very expensive cage." "Victoria, I'm not asking you to break me out of it," she said firmly. "I'm asking if you want to build something different together. Something that looks like partnership and feels like choice and doesn't require either of us to pretend we're people we're not." "What if we fail?" "Then we fail honestly." Victoria's voice was steady. "I've spent my whole life avoiding failure by avoiding risk. I'm tired of it. I'd rather try something impossible with you than keep succeeding at being alone." Lucas stood and walked to the window. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving Nashville washed clean and gleaming. Somewhere in this city, people were living conventional lives with conventional marriages and conventional problems. This wasn't conventional. This was terrifying. "Okay," he said. Victoria stood so quickly her chair scraped. "Okay?" "Yes." "Okay, let's do this." "You're sure?" "No." Lucas turned to face her. "I'm not sure about anything except that watching you sit at my kitchen table eating pancakes with my daughter felt more right than anything has in 2 years. So, no, I'm not sure, but I'm willing to find out." Victoria crossed the room in 3 steps and did something Lucas had never expected. She hugged him. Not a professional handshake or a polite shoulder touch. An actual, both arms around him, face pressed to his chest hug that lasted exactly 7 seconds and felt like free-falling and solid ground at the same time. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen how bad I am at loading the dishwasher." She laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was so unexpected and genuine that Lucas committed it to memory. They told Mia that afternoon. Lucas had rehearsed 17 different versions of the conversation, but in the end, he just sat on the floor of her purple room and said it plainly. "You know how Miss Victoria is sick and I've been helping her?" Mia nodded, setting down her crayons. "Well, we've decided that the best way to help each other is to become a family. Miss Victoria and I are going to get married." He braced for confusion or questions or the tears he'd been dreading. Instead, Mia's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Miss Victoria's going to live with us?" Lucas blinked. "Well, we haven't figured out all the details yet. Can she bring her house? Because her house is really pretty and has big windows." It's more complicated than that, baby." "Okay, but she's going to be here for pancakes every Sunday, right? Because she said she liked them, even though she doesn't usually eat breakfast." Victoria, who'd been standing in the doorway, stepped into the room. I can definitely do Sunday pancakes. Mia launched herself at Victoria with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just received the best news of her life. Victoria caught her, stumbled slightly, then held on while Mia chattered about how this meant she'd have someone to help her pick out clothes because Daddy was terrible at matching colors. Over Mia's head, Victoria met Lucas's eyes. He mouthed, "That went well." She mouthed back, surprisingly well. And for the first time since this impossible arrangement had been proposed, Lucas allowed himself to believe it might actually work. The next 2 weeks were a blur of logistics. Victoria's lawyer revised the papers to reflect their final agreements. Lucas's sister called from Portland, confused and concerned, and he spent an hour on the phone explaining the situation in terms that made it sound almost reasonable. "So you're marrying your boss," his sister said slowly, "because she has cancer and you're a single dad, and you've decided mutual vulnerability is a good foundation for legal partnership." When you say it like that, it sounds insane. Lucas, it is insane. I know. A pause. But are you happy? The question caught him off guard. Happy felt like the wrong word for what he was feeling, but content, hopeful, less terrified of the future? I think I could be, he said. His sister sighed. Then I support you. But if this goes sideways, you're moving to Portland, and I'm saying I told you so for the rest of your life. Deal. At work, they told no one. Victoria insisted on maintaining complete professionalism until after the wedding, and Lucas agreed. Aldridge Capital didn't need to know its CEO was marrying a junior portfolio manager until the paperwork was filed and irreversible. But Diane knew, and Diane, in her infinite competence, had opinions. "You're sure about this?" she asked Lucas one afternoon, cornering him outside Victoria's office. "No," Lucas said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." Diane studied him with the intensity of someone conducting a background check. Then she nodded once, sharply. Good. She needs someone who isn't sure, someone who chooses it anyway. That's a strange endorsement. Victoria doesn't need endorsements. She needs someone who shows up. Diane's expression softened. You show up, Lucas. Keep doing that. They set the wedding for a Friday afternoon in late March. Small, simple. Just the legal requirement of witnesses and a judge who'd agreed to perform the ceremony in Victoria's living room, Lucas told Mia 2 days before. Remember how I said Miss Victoria and I were getting married? Uh-huh. Mia was coloring again, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Well, it's happening on Friday. We're going to have a small ceremony at her house, and then we're all going out for dinner, your choice of restaurant. Mia looked up. Can I wear my fancy dress, the one with the sparkles? Absolutely. And can I be the flower girl? Lucas hadn't thought of that. There aren't really going to be flowers, baby. It's just a small ceremony. Every wedding needs a flower girl, Daddy. It's the rules. Is it? Yes. She said it with such conviction that Lucas made a mental note to buy flowers. Thursday night, Victoria came over for what had become their weekly dinner. Lucas cooked. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, while Victoria and Mia worked on a puzzle at the kitchen table. After Mia went to bed, they sat on the couch with coffee, not touching, but close enough that the space between them felt intentional. Are you nervous? Lucas asked. Terrified. Really? No. Victoria smiled, but I thought it would make you feel better if I said so. You're terrible at lying. I'm excellent at lying. I run a company built on controlled information. That's different. That's strategy. This is strategy too. Victoria set down her coffee. I'm strategically choosing you. I'm strategically building a life that doesn't require me to be alone. I'm strategically allowing myself to be vulnerable with someone I trust. That's the least romantic thing I've ever heard. I know. She turned to look at him. Does it bother you? Lucas considered the question honestly. A year ago, it would have devastated him. He'd married Rebecca believing in grand romance and soulmates and the kind of love that conquered everything. That marriage had ended in a courthouse. This marriage was starting in a living room with legal documents and mutual understanding and the absence of illusions. No, he said finally. It doesn't bother me. I think I prefer it this way. Why? Because it's honest. Because we both know exactly what we're signing up for. Because there's no pressure to be anything except what we already are. Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. The gesture was small, casual, but it felt monumental. "Thank you for saying yes," she said quietly. "Thank you for asking." They sat like that until Victoria's medication alarm went off, a quiet reminder that reality didn't pause for meaningful moments. She took her pills with water Lucas had already set out, and he drove her home through a city that had started to feel less foreign. Friday arrived with perfect weather and the kind of nervous energy that made Lucas check his tie 17 times. Mia wore her sparkly dress and carried a small bouquet of white roses Lucas had bought that morning. She took her job as flower girl with solemn seriousness, practicing her walk down the hallway while Lucas got ready. They arrived at Victoria's house at 3 o'clock. Diane was already there, along with the judge, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who'd known Victoria for years and had agreed to keep the ceremony private. Victoria wore a simple cream dress that probably cost more than Lucas's monthly salary, but looked effortless. Her hair was up, her expression calm, and when she saw Mia clutching those white roses, something in her face melted. "You look beautiful," she told Mia. "You too," Mia whispered back. The ceremony lasted 9 minutes. The judge read the legal requirements, asked them to exchange vows they'd written separately, and pronounced them married with the same efficiency she'd used to notarize a document. Lucas's vows were simple. "I promise to show up, to be honest, to choose you every day, not because I have to, but because I want to." Victoria's vows were simpler. "I promise the same, and I promise to let you." They exchanged rings, plain platinum bands they'd chosen together at a jewelry store in East Nashville. No diamonds, no embellishment, just metal and commitment and two people choosing the impossible. When the judge said, "You may kiss," Lucas and Victoria looked at each other with the awkwardness of colleagues who'd just signed a merger. Then Victoria leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. "Close enough," she whispered. Mia clapped. Diane smiled. The judge signed the papers. And just like that, Lucas Bennett and Victoria Hale were married. Dinner was at a steakhouse Mia had chosen solely because they had milkshakes. They sat in a booth, Lucas, Victoria, Mia, and Diane, and celebrated with the quiet satisfaction of people who'd accomplished something difficult. Mia dominated the conversation again, asking Victoria if being married meant she got to pick out furniture for the big house, and whether they could get a dog now that they were a family. Victoria fielded every question with patience and honesty. Maybe on the furniture, absolutely not on the dog. When they got home that night, to Lucas's apartment because they still hadn't figured out the living arrangements, Mia was asleep before her head hit the pillow. Lucas and Victoria stood in the kitchen, married but unsure what that meant in practical terms. "So," Lucas said. "So," Victoria echoed. "This is strange. Extremely strange. Do you want coffee? I should go home, let you two have your space. Or you could stay." Lucas said it before he'd fully thought it through. The couch is comfortable, and it's late, and you look exhausted." Victoria was exhausted. The week had taken its toll, and even with treatment going well, her energy levels were unpredictable. "Okay," she said. Lucas found her a blanket and a pillow, helped her settle on the couch that was definitely not big enough for someone accustomed to luxury, made sure she had water and her phone and everything she might need. "Lucas," she called as he was heading to his room. He stopped. "This was a good day." He smiled. "Yeah, it was." And somewhere between the courthouse where his first marriage ended and the living room where his second marriage began, Lucas Bennett realized that maybe happiness wasn't about grand romance or perfect timing. Maybe it was about choosing someone who chose you back and showing up every day until showing up became home. The news broke on Monday morning like a storm nobody saw coming. Lucas arrived at Aldridge Capital at his usual time, coffee in hand, expecting the normal rhythm of spreadsheets and client calls. Instead, he walked into a lobby buzzing with whispers that died the moment he stepped off the elevator. Diane intercepted him before he reached his office. "Conference room, now." Her voice was clipped, professional, but her eyes held a warning. The board called an emergency meeting. Lucas's stomach dropped. "About what?" "About the fact that our CEO got married Friday and didn't tell anyone until the marriage certificate hit public records this morning." Diane's expression was unreadable. They're not happy. The conference room held 8 board members, all wearing expressions that ranged from confused to furious. Victoria sat at the head of the table, immaculate in a navy suit, her face betraying nothing. She didn't look at Lucas when he entered. "Mr. Bennett," James Carmichael, the board's chairman, gestured to an empty chair. "Please sit." Lucas sat. The silence was suffocating. "We've just been informed," Carmichael continued, his voice tight with barely controlled anger, "that you and Ms. Hale were married 3 days ago. Is this true?" "Yes, sir." "And neither of you thought to disclose this to the board beforehand?" "It was a private matter," Victoria said, her voice calm. "And it doesn't affect my ability to run this firm." "Doesn't affect—" Carmichael's face reddened. "Victoria, you married a junior employee. Do you have any idea what this looks like? The optics alone are catastrophic. We're already fielding calls from investors asking if this is some kind of what, James?" Victoria's eyes were ice. "Say it." The room went silent. "We need to understand the nature of this relationship," another board member said carefully. "The timeline. How long this has been going on. Whether there are any conflicts of interest we should be aware of." "There are no conflicts," Lucas said. "We work in different departments. I don't report to Victoria directly. And this relationship developed recently, outside of work." "How recently?" Lucas looked at Victoria. She gave the smallest nod. "We've known each other professionally for 4 years," Lucas said. "The personal relationship began approximately 6 weeks ago." The room erupted in murmurs. 6 weeks? Carmichael's voice was incredulous. "You've known each other 6 weeks and you got married?" "The timeline is irrelevant," Victoria cut in. "What matters is that we're both adults. We disclosed our relationship to HR as required by company policy, and we have a prenuptial agreement that clearly delineates our professional and personal boundaries." "You disclosed to HR, but not to the board." "HR handles employment matters. The board handles firm strategy. My marriage is not a strategic issue." "Your marriage to a subordinate absolutely is a strategic issue when you're the CEO of a publicly traded investment firm." Carmichael slammed his hand on the table. "This firm's reputation is built on trust, Victoria. Trust that our leadership makes sound decisions, and marrying someone after 6 weeks looks like anything but sound decision-making." Victoria stood slowly, deliberately, and the room fell silent. "My personal life is my own," she said quietly, but there was steel underneath. "I have given this firm 15 years. I built it from nothing after the crash. I've delivered consistent returns, maintained client confidence, and made every single person in this room considerably wealthier. I have earned the right to marry whoever I choose without asking permission." "This isn't about permission." "Then what is it about, James? Because it sounds like you're questioning my judgment. And if you're questioning my judgment on this, perhaps you're questioning my judgment on everything else." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Carmichael's jaw worked. "We're not questioning your professional judgment, but we need assurances that this situation won't impact the firm." "You have them." "Lucas will be transferring to a different department to eliminate any appearance of impropriety. We've already discussed it with HR. Our personal relationship will remain completely separate from our professional responsibilities. And if any board member has concerns about my ability to lead this firm, I invite them to call for a vote of no confidence right now." Nobody moved. Victoria let the silence stretch for 5 brutal seconds. "Then we're done here." She gathered her papers. "Lucas, a word." They walked to her office in complete silence. Diane took one look at their faces and made herself scarce. Victoria closed the door and leaned against it, her composure finally cracking. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have anticipated this, should have warned you." "You couldn't have known they'd react like this." "I knew exactly how they'd react. I just underestimated how much I'd care." She moved to the window, her reflection ghost-like against the Nashville skyline. "James is right about one thing. The optics are terrible. CEO marries junior employee after 6 weeks. It looks impulsive. It looks like poor judgment. It looks like exactly the kind of thing that makes investors nervous." Lucas crossed the room to stand beside her. "Do you regret it?" "No." The answer was immediate. "But I regret putting you in this position. I knew what I was signing up for." Did you? Because I'm not sure I did. Victoria turned to face him. I thought I could control the narrative, keep our personal life separate from work, maintain the same professional standards I've always held. But the truth is, the moment I married you, I gave up that control. So what do we do? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. We make it real, she said. What? The board wants assurances? We'll give them assurances. We'll move in together, immediately. We'll be seen together publicly. We'll act like a married couple instead of business partners who happen to share legal documents. She looked at him. Can you do that? Lucas thought about his apartment, about Mia's purple room and the routines they'd built, about upending everything for a marriage that was supposed to be practical and contained. Mia's going to have questions, he said finally. I know. Big questions, about why we're suddenly living together, about what this all means. Then we'll answer them, honestly, the way you always do. Lucas studied Victoria's face, the determined set of her jaw, the fear she was working so hard to hide. Okay, he said. We'll make it real. Victoria's shoulders dropped half an inch. Thank you. But I need you to promise me something. What? That this doesn't become another thing you're managing, another portfolio to optimize. Lucas took her hand. If we're doing this, if we're really doing this, then it has to be messy. It has to be imperfect. It has to be more than just optics. Victoria's fingers tightened around his. I don't know how to be messy. Then I'll teach you. She smiled, and it was small and uncertain and completely genuine. Deal. They told Mia that night over pizza that Lucas had burned slightly around the edges. So here's the thing, Lucas started, watching his daughter pick pepperoni off her slice with intense concentration. You know how Miss Victoria and I got married? Uh-huh. Well, we've decided that instead of living in 2 different houses, we're all going to live together. In Miss Victoria's house. Mia's head snapped up. The one with the big windows? That's the one. And I get my own room? Lucas glanced at Victoria, who nodded. You get your own room. We'll paint it whatever color you want. Even purple? Even purple, Victoria confirmed. Mia was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she launched into a rapid-fire list of requirements that included glow-in-the-dark stars, a reading nook, and shelves for all her stuffed animals. Lucas and Victoria exchanged a look over her head that said, that went easier than expected. But later, after Mia was in bed, Lucas found her sitting on her floor surrounded by drawings. Hey, baby girl, what are you doing? Drawing our new house. She held up a picture that showed 3 stick figures standing in front of a building with oversized windows. That's you, that's me, and that's Victoria. It's beautiful. Daddy? Mia's voice went quiet. Is Victoria going to be my new mom? The question hit Lucas in the chest. Do you want her to be? Mia considered this with the seriousness of someone making a life-altering decision. I don't know. I already have a mom. But Mom doesn't live with us anymore, and Victoria is nice, and she listens when I talk about dinosaurs. Lucas sat down beside her. Here's the thing about families, Mia. They can look lots of different ways. You have a mom who loves you even though she doesn't live with us. And now you have Victoria who's married to me and cares about you. She doesn't have to replace anyone. She can just be another person who's part of our family. Like a bonus person? Exactly like a bonus person. Mia nodded slowly. Okay, I like that. She picked up a purple crayon. Can we get a dog now that we have a bigger house? We'll talk about it. That means no. That means we'll talk about it. Moving happened faster than Lucas anticipated. Victoria hired movers who packed up his entire apartment in less than 6 hours, transporting everything to Green Hills with the efficiency of a military operation. Mia's room was painted purple by the end of the week. Glow-in-the-dark stars appeared on the ceiling. A reading nook materialized in the corner with cushions and a small bookshelf. Lucas's belongings disappeared into the master bedroom that was approximately 3 times the size of his old apartment. His clothes hung in a closet that could house a small family. His books sat on shelves next to Victoria's collection of finance journals and first-edition novels she'd never mentioned owning. They circled each other carefully those first few days. Victoria left for work early. Lucas dropped Mia at school and followed. They passed each other in the kitchen, in the hallway, in the office, maintaining perfect professional distance while trying to figure out how to share a bathroom. Thursday arrived with the weight of routine. Victoria's treatment had been moved to the afternoon to accommodate her schedule, and Lucas drove her to the appointment with Mia in the back seat, chattering about her upcoming field trip to the zoo. In the waiting room, Mia sat between them, coloring in a book Victoria had bought her. When the nurse called Victoria's name, Mia looked up. "Can I come with you?" Victoria hesitated. "It's not very interesting, sweetheart. Just doctors and medicine." "But you're scared." The assessment was delivered with such matter-of-fact certainty that Victoria actually blinked. "What makes you say that?" "Because you do the thing Daddy does when he's scared. You get really, really still." Mia reached for Victoria's hand. "It's okay to be scared, but you shouldn't be scared alone." Victoria's eyes went bright. She looked at Lucas, who nodded. "Okay," Victoria said quietly. "You can come with me." Lucas watched them walk down the hallway together, the powerful CEO and the 6-year-old girl, and felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of what family could mean. An hour later, they emerged. Mia was still chattering, now about the really cool machine she'd seen and how the nurse had let her push a button. Victoria looked exhausted, but less alone. That night after Mia was asleep, they sat in the living room with tea Victoria claimed helped with nausea. "She's remarkable," Victoria said. "Your daughter, she sees things adults miss." "She learned it from watching me struggle," Lucas said. "Kids are perceptive about fear. They have to be. It's how they know when to worry." "Were you worried when Rebecca left?" It was the first time Victoria had asked directly about his divorce. "Terrified," Lucas admitted. "Not about losing Rebecca. We'd been losing each other for years, but about failing Mia, about being the kind of father who couldn't hold his family together." "You didn't fail her." "I failed at marriage." "Or your marriage failed you." Victoria set down her tea. "There's a difference." Lucas looked at her. "Is that what you think about us? That we can't fail because we never promised success?" "I think we promised honesty and partnership and showing up." Victoria's voice was quiet. "The rest is just seeing what happens." "That's terrifying." "I know." She smiled. "But at least we're terrified together." The weeks folded into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Mia adapted to her new school routine with the resilience children possessed. Lucas and Victoria learned to navigate shared space, which side of the bed, who made coffee, whose turn it was to fold laundry that neither of them was particularly good at folding. At work, Lucas transferred to the acquisitions department. Different floor, different projects, zero overlap with Victoria's direct responsibilities. The whispers continued, but they were quieter now. Resigned. The board had made their disapproval known and then moved on to more pressing matters. Victoria's treatment continued every Thursday. Sometimes Mia came with them. Sometimes Lucas dropped her at Mrs. Chen's house and picked her up after. But every Thursday, without fail, Lucas drove Victoria home and stayed until she was settled. On the 6th Thursday, Victoria didn't get up from the couch. Lucas found her there at 8 p.m., exactly where he'd left her 3 hours earlier, staring at the ceiling with tears running silently down her face. "Victoria?" He knelt beside the couch. "What happened? Are you in pain? Should I call the doctor?" "No." Her voice was hollow. "I'm fine. The treatment was fine. Everything is fine." "You're crying." "I'm aware." Lucas grabbed tissues and sat on the floor beside her. "Talk to me." Victoria was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer, then barely above a whisper. "I'm so tired." "I know." "No, you don't." She turned her head to look at him. "I'm tired of being strong, tired of managing this like it's a business problem, tired of pretending that pumping poison into my body every week is just an inconvenience I can schedule around." "Then stop pretending. I don't know how to not be strong." Lucas reached for her hand. "Being strong doesn't mean not crying. It means crying and showing up anyway." "That's not strength. That's just surviving." "Sometimes surviving is enough." Victoria's face crumpled, and Lucas moved from the floor to the couch, pulling her against his chest while she shook with sobs that had been building for weeks. He didn't offer solutions or platitudes, just held her while she fell apart, in a way he suspected she'd never allowed herself to fall apart before. When the crying finally stopped, Victoria stayed pressed against him, her breathing evening out. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not trying to fix it." "I can't fix cancer, Victoria. I can just sit with you while it sucks." She pulled back enough to look at him. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy, her composure completely destroyed. "I must look terrible," she said. "You look human." Lucas brushed hair off her forehead. "I like it." Something shifted in the space between them. Something that had been theoretical became tangible. Victoria's hand came up to touch his face, tentative, questioning. "Lucas?" "Yeah?" "Would it complicate things if I kissed you?" His heart stopped. "Probably." "Do you care?" "Not even a little bit." She kissed him. Soft at first, uncertain, like someone learning a language they'd never spoken. Then deeper, more certain, like someone remembering something they'd forgotten they knew. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling. "That was complicated," Lucas finished. "I was going to say nice." It was definitely nice. They sat there, foreheads touching, trying to figure out what this meant for a marriage that was supposed to be practical. "We should talk about this," Victoria said. "Probably." "Set boundaries, establish expectations." "Very responsible." "I'm serious, Lucas." "So am I." He pulled back to look at her. "But can we talk about it tomorrow? When you're not exhausted and I'm not terrified of saying the wrong thing?" Victoria nodded. "Tomorrow." But tomorrow brought its own complications. Lucas woke up to find Victoria's side of the bed empty. He found her in the kitchen at 5:30 a.m., already dressed for work, coffee in hand. "Morning," he said carefully. "Morning." She didn't look at him. "I have an early meeting. I'll probably be home late." "Victoria, I need to go." She left before he could finish the sentence. The pattern repeated for 3 days. Victoria left early, came home late, and avoided being alone with Lucas with the precision of someone executing a carefully planned strategy. On the third night, Lucas had had enough. He waited in the living room until she came home at 9:30, clearly surprised to find him still awake. "We need to talk," he said. "I'm exhausted, Lucas. Can this wait?" "No?" He stood. "You've been avoiding me since Thursday, since we kissed, and I need to know if that's because you regret it or because you're scared of what it means." Victoria set down her bag. "Both." "Okay, that's honest. I can work with honest." "I don't know how to do this," she said. "We had an arrangement, clear boundaries, and now those boundaries are blurry, and I don't know how to navigate blurry. So we figure it out together. What if figuring it out ruins everything? What if we try for something more and it fails and we lose even the partnership we had?" Lucas crossed the room to stand in front of her. "What if we try for something more and it works?" "That's not a risk I know how to calculate." "Then stop calculating." He took her hands. "Victoria, I know this wasn't what we planned. I know it's messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea, but that kiss felt more real than anything I've felt in years. And I think you felt it too." She looked up at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I did." "Then let's see where it goes. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Okay," she whispered. "Possibility." This time when they kissed, it wasn't tentative. It was a choice, a conscious decision to step off the cliff and see if they could fly. They made it to the couch before gravity took over. Hands in hair, breath coming fast. The careful control both of them maintained dissolving into something urgent and necessary. "Wait!" Victoria gasped against his mouth. "Mia?" "Asleep. Has been for 2 hours. And we're really doing this?" Lucas pulled back to look at her. "Do you want to?" "Yes." "But Lucas, I need you to know I haven't done this in a long time. And with the treatment, my body is different, and I don't know if I can..." He kissed her quiet. "We'll figure it out. Together. No pressure. No expectations." "Just possibility?" "Just possibility." They figured it out. Slowly, carefully, with more laughter than either expected when Victoria's medication alarm went off at the worst possible moment and when Lucas accidentally elbowed her trying to navigate unfamiliar furniture in the dark, after they lay tangled together on the too small couch, breathing hard. Well, Victoria said, that was definitely complicated. Worth it, though. Definitely worth it. Lucas pulled the throw blanket over them both. So what now? Now we sleep here because I'm too comfortable to move. I meant with us. With this. Victoria was quiet. Then, I don't know, but I'd like to find out. That's all I needed to hear. They fell asleep there, wrapped around each other, and for the first time since this impossible arrangement began, Lucas allowed himself to believe that maybe they were building something more than survival. Maybe they were building home. Morning arrived with Mia's voice cutting through the stillness. Daddy, why are you sleeping on the couch with Victoria? Lucas's eyes snapped open. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating his daughter standing 3 feet away in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant and looking deeply confused. Victoria stirred against his chest, then went completely rigid when she realized where they were. Good morning, sweetheart, Lucas managed, his voice rough with sleep. We fell asleep watching a movie last night. What movie? A boring grown-up one, Victoria said, sitting up and smoothing her hair with as much dignity as someone could muster while wrapped in a throw blanket at 6 a.m. You wouldn't have liked it. Mia studied them both with the analytical precision of a detective examining a crime scene. Then she shrugged. Okay, can we have pancakes? Absolutely, Lucas said, relief flooding through him. Give us 5 minutes. Mia wandered toward the kitchen, and Lucas and Victoria looked at each other. That was close, Victoria whispered. She's 6. She doesn't think about... He gestured vaguely at the couch. Yet. But she's smart. She'll start asking questions. Then we'll answer them. Lucas stood, extending a hand to pull Victoria up. Honestly, age-appropriately, like we always do. They made pancakes together, a new kind of choreography where Victoria measured ingredients while Lucas worked the griddle and Mia provided running commentary on everything from the weather to her upcoming spelling test. It felt domestic in a way Lucas hadn't experienced since before the divorce. Natural. Right. At work, they maintained their careful distance. Different departments, different meetings, professional nods when they passed in hallways. But Lucas caught himself looking for her throughout the day, checking if her office light was still on late in the evening, noticing when she skipped lunch because a client call ran long. Thursday treatment became a shared ritual. Lucas drove, Mia sat in back doing homework, and Victoria managed her medication with the same precision she applied to quarterly projections. Except now, when the nausea hit hard, she let Lucas hold her hand. When exhaustion made standing difficult, she accepted help without protest. Progress, Lucas thought. Small, significant progress. 3 weeks after the couch incident, Victoria's oncologist delivered news during a routine checkup. The tumors are responding better than expected, Dr. Melissa Chen said, reviewing scans on her computer screen. We're seeing significant reduction in size. If this continues, we might be able to move to maintenance treatment sooner than anticipated. As Victoria's hand tightened around Lucas's. How much sooner? Instead of 6 months of aggressive chemotherapy, possibly 4. We'll know more after your next scan, but this is very encouraging. In the parking lot afterward, Victoria sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. Say something, Lucas prompted gently. I'm afraid to believe it. Her voice was barely audible. I'm afraid if I let myself hope, it'll turn around and destroy me. Hey. Lucas turned in his seat to face her fully. Hope isn't the enemy. Cancer is. And right now your body is winning. For now. For now is all we've got. For now is enough. Victoria finally looked at him, and her eyes were bright with tears she was trying desperately not to shed. What if it comes back? What if we do all this? Treatment, recovery, building a life together, and it comes back? Then we fight it again. Together. Lucas reached for her hand. But we don't borrow tomorrow's problems, Victoria. We deal with today. And today you got good news. Let yourself have that. She nodded, then broke. Lucas pulled her across the console into his arms while she cried against his shoulder. Not the desperate sobs from weeks ago, but something quieter. Relief mixed with fear, mixed with the exhausting weight of hope. When she finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes and managed a shaky smile. I'm getting mascara all over your shirt. I own other shirts. Expensive shirts. I bought you those shirts. Then you can buy me more. He kissed her forehead. Come on, let's go home and tell Mia the good news. Mia's response was characteristically direct. Does this mean Victoria's going to stop being sick? It means the medicine is working, Lucas explained, all three of them sitting at the kitchen table with the good china Victoria had insisted they use to mark the occasion. Her body is getting stronger. Good. Mia reached across the table to pat Victoria's hand with solemn seriousness. You should keep getting stronger. We need you. Victoria's composure cracked again, but this time she was smiling through the tears. I need you too, sweetheart. That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas found Victoria standing in the doorway of Mia's room, watching her sleep. She snores, Victoria whispered, like a tiny chainsaw, has since she was a baby. It's adorable. Boy, Victoria leaned against the doorframe. Lucas, can I ask you something? Always. When you married Rebecca, what did you think your life would look like? The question caught him off guard. Why are you asking? Because I'm trying to understand if what we have is enough. If a marriage that started as a legal arrangement can become something real without both of us pretending it's something it's not. Lucas thought about Rebecca, about the wedding with 200 guests and promises made in front of everyone they knew. About how those promises had dissolved slowly, painfully, until they were just words neither of them believed anymore. When I married Rebecca, he said slowly, I thought love was enough. That if we loved each other, everything else would work itself out. But love without partnership is just two people standing close together while everything falls apart around them. Victoria turned to look at him. And now? Now I think partnership is the foundation. Trust, showing up, choosing each other deliberately every day. And if love grows from that? He stepped closer. Then it's real. Not because we promised it at a wedding, but because we built it together. Is that what's happening with us? Love growing? Lucas could have deflected, could have kept it safe and theoretical. Instead, he chose honesty. Yes, at least for me. Victoria's breath caught. Lucas, I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm not asking for anything except what you're willing to give. He took her hand. But I want you to know where I am. I want you to know that this stopped being just practical for me weeks ago. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tight around his. Then she pulled him down the hallway to their bedroom and closed the door. I don't know how to say the words, she said, her back against the door. I don't know how to be vulnerable like that. But Lucas, when Dr. Chen gave me good news today, you were the first person I wanted to tell. When Mia does something adorable, I find myself looking for you to share it with. When I wake up in the middle of the night terrified, the only thing that makes it bearable is knowing you're right there. She crossed the room to stand in front of him. I don't know if that's love, but it's something I've never felt before, something I didn't know I could feel. Her hand came up to touch his face. So if you're willing to be patient while I figure out what to call it, I'm willing to keep building it with you. Lucas kissed her, and it was different from before. Slower, deeper. Less about possibility and more about promise. They made love that night with the kind of presence that came from knowing exactly what they were choosing. Afterward, Victoria fell asleep with her head on his chest, and Lucas lay awake listening to her breathe, thinking about the impossible distance between a courthouse divorce and this bedroom where he'd somehow found a second chance at everything. May arrived with warmth and the kind of relentless spring that made Nashville bloom in every possible shade of green. Mia's 7th birthday fell on a Saturday, and she'd been planning the party for weeks with the intensity of a military campaign. I want a princess cake, she'd announced, but not a pink princess, a purple princess with a sword. Victoria had taken this as a personal challenge. Lucas found her in the kitchen at midnight the night before the party, surrounded by fondant and food coloring, constructing what could only be described as a structural engineering marvel disguised as a cake. You know, we could have just bought one, Lucas said, sliding onto a bar stool. Where's the fun in that? Victoria's hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had purple frosting on her cheek. She looked completely out of her element and absolutely beautiful. You've never made a cake in your life. There's a first time for everything. She piped intricate details onto a fondant sword with surprising precision. Besides, Mia specifically requested a warrior princess, and I'm not about to deliver some store-bought approximation. Lucas watched her work. This woman who ran boardrooms without blinking, now completely focused on getting the tiny shield details exactly right for a 7-year-old's approval. "I love you," he said. Victoria's hand stilled. She looked up at him, frosting bag suspended midair. "You can't just say that while I'm holding a piping bag." "Why not?" "Because I can't kiss you without destroying 3 hours of work." "Then just say it back." She set down the piping bag carefully, precisely, walked around the kitchen island to where Lucas sat, cupped his face in her hands, thumbs brushing his cheekbones. "I love you," she said, and her voice shook slightly on the words. "I love you, and I'm terrified of it, and I don't know how to do it right, but I love you." Lucas pulled her into his lap and kissed her, careful not to disturb the frosting on her cheek. "You're doing it exactly right," he whispered against her mouth. They finished the cake together at 2 in the morning, and when Mia saw it the next day, a purple-robed warrior princess with an actual tiny fondant sword, she threw her arms around Victoria with such force they both nearly fell over. "It's perfect! You're perfect!" Mia squealed. "I'm really not," Victoria said, but she was smiling in a way Lucas had never seen. Open, unguarded, happy. The party was chaos in the best way. 12 7-year-olds hopped up on sugar, racing through the house, playing games Victoria had somehow researched and organized with her characteristic precision. Lucas caught her directing a treasure hunt with the same authority she used in board meetings, and he fell in love with her all over again. Later, when parents had collected their exhausted children and Mia was down for an inevitable sugar crash nap, Lucas and Victoria collapsed on the couch, surrounded by wrapping paper and deflated balloons. "We survived," Victoria said. "Barely." "Do we have to do this every year?" "Until she's 18 minimum." Victoria groaned, but she was smiling. "The things we do for love." Lucas's phone buzzed, a text from his sister in Portland, Jessica. "Mom wants to know when she gets to meet your wife. She's driving me insane asking about you." Lucas showed Victoria the message. They'd been putting off the family introductions, both of them uncertain how to explain their unconventional arrangement to people who'd expect conventional answers. "We can't avoid them forever," Victoria said. "I know." "What did you tell them about us?" "The truth, that we got married quickly because it made sense for both of us. That it's been complicated but good. That I'm happy." Victoria was quiet. "And they believed you?" "My sister thinks I'm insane. My mother thinks I'm rebounding, but they both said they'd support me as long as I'm sure." "Are you sure?" Lucas turned to face her fully. "Victoria, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. This marriage might have started as a practical arrangement, but it's become the realest thing I've ever had. You're the realest thing I've ever had." She kissed him, soft and sweet, then pulled back with a determined expression. "Okay, let's do it. Invite them to visit. I'll meet your family and try not to terrify them with spreadsheets." "My mother will love you." "Why?" "Because you make me happy. That's all she's ever wanted." Jessica and their mother arrived 2 weeks later. Lucas picked them up from the airport while Victoria stayed home with Mia, both of them preparing dinner with the nervous energy of people about to face judgment. "Daddy says Grandma asks a lot of questions," Mia said, carefully setting the table with the good plates Victoria had instructed her to use. "Does she?" "Yep. She asked me like 100 questions on the phone about you. Like if you're nice, and if you make Daddy smile, and if you know how to make macaroni and cheese." Victoria paused in her vegetable chopping. "What did you tell her?" "That you're really nice and Daddy smiles all the time now, and you don't make macaroni from a box, but yours tastes even better because you use like 5 different cheeses." Mia looked up. "I also told her you're getting better from being sick and that you're teaching me about numbers." "You told her I was sick? Was I not supposed to?" Mia's face fell. "I'm sorry, I didn't know it was a secret." No, sweetheart. It's not a secret." Victoria set down the knife and crouched to Mia's level. "I just didn't know if your daddy wanted to tell his mother about that part." "Daddy says we should always tell the truth, especially to family." "Your daddy is very wise." The front door opened and voices filled the entryway. Victoria stood, smoothing her shirt with hands that trembled slightly. Lucas appeared first, followed by a petite woman in her 60s with Lucas's eyes and a warm smile, and a younger woman who looked like a female version of Lucas. Mom, Jess, this is Victoria. Lucas's hand found the small of Victoria's back. Victoria, this is my mother Claire and my sister Jessica. Claire moved forward immediately, pulling Victoria into a hug that clearly surprised her. It's so lovely to finally meet you, dear. Lucas has told us so much. All good things, I hope, Victoria managed, her professional composure activating automatically. He said you make him happy. Claire pulled back, studying Victoria's face with a mother's intensity. That's all that matters to me. Jessica was more reserved, offering a handshake and a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Lucas had warned Victoria that his sister would be the harder sell, protective, skeptical of quick marriages, worried about Lucas getting hurt again. Dinner was surprisingly smooth. Claire asked questions, but they were kind ones, about Victoria's work, about the house, about how Mia was adjusting. Mia herself dominated much of the conversation, regaling her grandmother with stories about school and her new purple room and the warrior princess cake Victoria had made. You made that yourself? Claire looked genuinely impressed. Lucas said you were accomplished, but he didn't mention you were artistic. I'm not, usually, Victoria admitted. But Mia had a specific vision, and I couldn't let her down. Claire's expression softened further. You're good for him. I can see it. But after dinner, when Lucas was helping Mia get ready for bed and Claire was admiring the house, Jessica cornered Victoria in the kitchen. Can we talk? Jessica asked, her tone careful but firm. Of course. Jessica leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Look, I'm going to be direct because that's who I am. My brother went through hell with his divorce. Rebecca destroyed him, and then 6 months later he calls to say he's married someone he barely knows. I understand your concern. Do you? Jessica's eyes were sharp. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like two people using each other. You needed someone to help you through cancer treatment. Lucas needed stability for Mia. It's convenient, but convenience isn't love. Victoria could have gotten defensive, could have shut down the conversation with the ice-cold precision she used in hostile negotiations. Instead, she chose vulnerability. You're right, she said quietly. It started as convenience, a practical arrangement that made sense for both of us. But Jessica, somewhere between the legal documents and the Thursday treatments and the pancakes on Sunday morning, it became real. How can you be sure? Because I've spent my entire life avoiding risk, avoiding vulnerability, avoiding anything that couldn't be managed or controlled. Victoria met Jessica's eyes directly. Your brother makes me want to risk everything. He makes me want to be vulnerable. He makes me believe that maybe being loved is worth the terror of possibly losing it. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Then, he told you about Rebecca? About what she did? Some. Not everything. She had an affair for 8 months before Lucas found out. Told him he was boring, that he'd become just a function, father, provider, nothing interesting. Jessica's voice was tight with old anger. She destroyed his confidence in himself, made him believe he wasn't enough. Victoria's chest ached. He's never boring. He's remarkable. I know that. You know that. But does he know that? I tell him every chance I get. Jessica studied her for a long moment. Then her expression softened slightly. Mia adores you. That kid is the best judge of character I know. If she's decided you're family, that counts for something. She's an extraordinary child. Because Lucas is an extraordinary father. And if you hurt him, I won't, Victoria interrupted. At least not intentionally. But Jessica, I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise I know what I'm doing. All I can promise is that I'll show up every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Jessica's arms uncrossed. Okay? Okay. Okay, I believe you. And okay, I'll stop interrogating you. She extended her hand. Welcome to the family, Victoria. For real this time. Victoria shook it, relief flooding through her. The weekend visit ended with Claire declaring Victoria a keeper and Jessica privately telling Lucas that he'd better not mess this up because Victoria is too good to lose. After they left for the airport, Lucas found Victoria sitting in Mia's room, watching her sleep again. That went well, he said softly, sitting beside her on the floor. Your sister threatened me. She threatens everyone she cares about. It's her love language. Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. Your mother asked when we're going to give Mia a sibling. Lucas nearly choked. She what? Apparently she wants more grandchildren before she's too old to enjoy them. Victoria's voice was carefully neutral. I told her we hadn't discussed it. Because we haven't. I know. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Would you want that? More children? Lucas thought about it honestly. A year ago, I would have said absolutely not. I could barely handle one kid on my own. But now? He looked at Mia, peaceful in sleep. Now I think I could handle anything, as long as you were there to help. Even if the cancer comes back? Even if I can't? Victoria. He turned her face toward his. Stop borrowing problems from a future that might never happen. If you want kids, we'll figure it out. If you don't, that's fine too. If the cancer comes back, we'll fight it together and then make decisions. But right now, tonight, we have everything we need. She kissed him, and it was gratitude and love and the kind of bone-deep relief that came from being completely understood. Thursday came with sunshine and Victoria's scan appointment, the one that would determine if the improvement was real or just temporary luck. Lucas sat in the waiting room with Mia. She'd insisted on coming, said Victoria needed moral support, and tried not to watch the clock. The scan itself took 45 minutes. The wait for Dr. Chen to review the results felt like 45 years. When Victoria finally emerged with Dr. Chen beside her, her face was unreadable. Lucas stood, heart hammering. Well? Dr. Chen smiled. The tumors are nearly gone. We're looking at remission, pending a few more tests to confirm. But Victoria, this is the outcome we hoped for. Your body responded beautifully to treatment. Mia squealed and launched herself at Victoria, who caught her and held on tight. Lucas couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the magnitude of those words. Remission. Victoria was going to be okay. Lucas? Victoria was looking at him. Mia still in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Did you hear her? I'm going to be okay. He crossed the distance in 2 steps and wrapped both of them in his arms, all 3 of them crying and laughing in a hospital hallway while Dr. Chen smiled and gave them space. That night, they celebrated. Takeout from Mia's favorite restaurant, ice cream for dessert. Mia fell asleep on the couch between them, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. Lucas carried her to bed, tucked her in, and returned to find Victoria on the back patio, looking out at the Nashville skyline. Hey, he said softly. You okay? I don't know. She didn't turn around. I should be ecstatic. I am ecstatic. But I'm also terrified. Of what? Of believing it. Of letting my guard down. Of thinking I'm safe and then having it taken away. She finally looked at him. What if this is as good as it gets? What if I spend the rest of my life waiting for the other shoe to drop? Lucas took her hand. Then I'll spend the rest of my life reminding you that you're here, that you're alive, that you beat something that tried to kill you, and you did it with grace and strength and more courage than I've ever seen. I didn't do it alone. No, you didn't, and you never have to again. He pulled her close. Victoria, we can't control tomorrow. Cancer might come back, or we might get hit by a bus, or the world might end in some completely unexpected way. But we have tonight. We have right now. And right now, you're in remission and our daughter is asleep upstairs, and I love you more than I ever thought possible. Our daughter, Victoria repeated softly. You said our daughter. She is, isn't she? She asked me last week if she could call you Mom. Not instead of Rebecca, just also. Victoria's breath caught. What did you tell her? I told her that was her choice, that if she wanted to call you Mom, you'd probably be honored, but that she should ask you herself. I had no idea she was thinking about that. She thinks about a lot of things. Lucas smiled. She's like you that way. Always analyzing, always planning. They stood there watching the city lights, and Victoria let herself believe just for a moment that maybe this happiness was real, that maybe she'd earned it, that maybe showing up was enough. The question came on a Tuesday morning in June, exactly 9 months after Victoria had first proposed in that driveway. Lucas was making coffee when Mia appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair a wild tangle that would require serious negotiation before school. Daddy, can I ask Victoria something important? Lucas glanced toward the hallway where Victoria was getting ready for work. Sure, baby. What is it? Not you, Victoria. Mia's expression was serious in the way that meant she'd been thinking about this for a while. It's a big question. Okay, let me get her. He found Victoria in their bedroom, buttoning a silk blouse while reviewing something on her phone. She looked up when he entered, and the casual intimacy of the moment still caught him sometimes. This brilliant, powerful woman getting dressed in their shared space like it was the most natural thing in the world. Mia has a big question for you, Lucas said. Victoria's eyebrows rose. Should I be worried? I don't think so, but she's serious about it. They found Mia sitting at the kitchen table, swinging her legs and picking at a placemat with unusual nervousness. Good morning, sweetheart, Victoria said, sliding into the chair beside her. Your dad said you wanted to ask me something? Mia nodded but didn't speak immediately. She looked at Lucas, then back at Victoria, then down at her hands. Take your time, Victoria said gently. Okay. Mia took a deep breath. So, you know how I have a mom already? Like, my real mom who lives in Green Hills with Brad? Victoria's expression remained neutral, but Lucas saw her shoulders tense slightly. I do. And she's still my mom, and I still love her even though I don't see her as much as I used to. Of course you do. But you're here all the time. You make my lunch and help with my homework, and you came to my school play, even though you had to leave work early. And you made me that warrior princess cake, and you taught me about percentages. And you sleep in the same room as Daddy, and you're married to him for real now, not just for the papers. Victoria's eyes were already bright. That's all true. So I was thinking, Mia's voice got smaller. Would it be okay if I called you Mom too? Not instead of my other mom, just also. The word hung in the air like something fragile and precious. Victoria's composure shattered completely. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she pulled Mia into her arms, holding her tight. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. I would be so honored, so incredibly honored. Really? Mia pulled back to look at her. You're not sad that I want to call you that. Sad? Mia, this is one of the happiest moments of my entire life. Even happier than when you got better from being sick? Victoria laughed through her tears. Different kind of happy, but yes, just as big. Mia hugged her again, and Lucas stood there watching his daughter and his wife hold each other, and had to turn away to wipe his own eyes. This was what he'd been too broken to imagine a year ago. Not just survival, not just stability, but a family rebuilt from impossible pieces into something whole. Work that day felt surreal. Lucas moved through meetings and client calls while his brain kept circling back to that kitchen table moment. Victoria had texted him twice, once at 10, once at noon, just heart emojis. No words necessary. At 3, Diane appeared at his office door looking uncharacteristically flustered. Lucas, we have a situation. His stomach dropped. What kind of situation? Rebecca is in the building. She's asking to see Victoria. Lucas was out of his chair immediately. Why? She wouldn't say, but she seems upset. Victoria's in with the board for another 20 minutes, and Rebecca said she'd wait. Lucas found Rebecca in the lobby, and the sight of her after 9 months was jarring. She looked the same, polished, put together, the woman he'd spent 9 years married to, but also completely unfamiliar. Lucas, she stood when she saw him. I was hoping to speak with your wife. About what? About my daughter. Rebecca's voice was tight. About the fact that Mia called me yesterday and asked if it was okay to call Victoria Mom because she didn't want to hurt my feelings. Lucas's chest constricted. Rebecca, is it true? You're letting her call another woman Mom? I'm not letting her do anything. Mia made that choice herself. She's 7 years old. She doesn't understand what she's choosing. She understands that Victoria shows up, that Victoria is there every single day, doing the work of being a parent while you see her every other weekend and occasional Wednesdays. Rebecca flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? Lucas kept his voice level, conscious of the receptionist pretending not to listen. You wanted the divorce, Rebecca. You wanted to build a new life with Brad. You got that. But you don't get to dictate how Mia processes having a stepmother who actually acts like a mother. I am her mother. Then act like it. Lucas's patience finally snapped. You have her for 48 hours twice a month, and half the time you're canceling because Brad has work events. Victoria has her every day. Victoria makes her lunch and checks her homework and sits up with her when she has nightmares about you leaving. So yes, Mia wants to call her mom, and I'm not going to tell my daughter that she can't love someone who loves her back. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I do love her. I know you do. But love without presence is just words, Rebecca. Victoria learned that. I learned that. And now Mia is learning it too. They stood there in tense silence until the elevator dinged and Victoria emerged, clearly having been alerted by Diane. She took in the scene with quick assessment, then approached with professional composure that didn't quite hide the steel underneath. Rebecca, she said evenly, would you like to talk somewhere private? I want to understand why you're trying to replace me. I'm not trying to replace anyone. Victoria's voice was calm but firm. I'm trying to be present in Mia's life, to give her stability and support and the kind of parenting she deserves. If that makes you uncomfortable, I understand, but I'm not going to apologize for loving her. She's my daughter. She's also Lucas's daughter, and now she's part of my life too. That doesn't diminish your role unless you let it. Rebecca looked between them, Lucas and Victoria standing together, a united front, and something in her expression shifted. Not acceptance, but maybe recognition. Does she seem happy? Rebecca asked quietly. Honestly? Yes, Victoria said without hesitation. She talks about you constantly, shows me pictures from your weekends together. She loves you, Rebecca. This isn't about choosing, it's about having more people who love her. But Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded slowly. Okay, but I want to be clear. I'm still her mother. I'm still important in her life. You absolutely are, Lucas said, and we'd never suggest otherwise. Fine. Rebecca straightened her shoulders, pulling her professional mask back into place. Then I suppose I should meet you properly, Victoria, since you're apparently going to be in my daughter's life permanently. I'd like that, Victoria said. They ended up in a coffee shop down the street, the three of them at a corner table navigating the most awkward conversation Lucas had experienced since the divorce proceedings. But slowly, painfully, they found a rhythm. Rebecca asked questions about Mia's daily routine, her school performance, her friends. Victoria answered honestly, never trying to diminish Rebecca's role, but also not apologizing for hers. By the end, they'd established something that resembled détente. Rebecca agreed to have a conversation with Mia about the mom name, not to forbid it, but to make sure Mia understood that having two mothers didn't mean loving one less. She's lucky, Rebecca said as they were leaving, and there was genuine emotion in her voice. To have you. I might not like how we got here, but Lucas is right. You show up. That matters. Thank you, Victoria said simply. After Rebecca left, Lucas and Victoria stood on the sidewalk in downtown Nashville, processing what had just happened. That was intense, Lucas said. Necessary, though. Victoria leaned against him. She's Mia's mother. We needed to find a way to coexist. You were gracious. I was terrified. But you taught me that showing up scared is better than not showing up at all. Lucas kissed her temple. Let's go home. To our daughter. The word felt right in a way it hadn't before. Our daughter. Summer unfolded with the kind of golden warmth that made everything feel possible. Victoria's maintenance treatment was minimal. Quarterly checkups, blood work, scans every 6 months. Each clear result was celebrated quietly, gratefully, without the terror that had marked the early months. Mia started calling Victoria Mom naturally, unselfconsciously. Usually in the same breath she'd mention my other mom with equal affection. The adults navigated it with more grace than Lucas had expected, and Rebecca even invited them to Mia's birthday party at her place, a gesture of peace that felt monumental. At work, the whispers about Victoria and Lucas had faded into background noise. They were just another married couple navigating careers and family. Boring, normal, exactly what they'd both needed. One evening in late July, Lucas came home to find Victoria and Mia in the backyard, sprawled on a blanket, watching clouds. That one looks like a dragon, Mia was saying. I see it, with the wings spread wide. What do you see, Daddy? Mia asked as Lucas joined them on the blanket. He looked up at the sky, at the shapes drifting past, and felt the full weight of contentment. I see home, he said. Victoria's hand found his, fingers intertwining. That night, after Mia was asleep, they sat on their back patio with wine and comfortable silence. "I was thinking," Victoria said eventually, "about what your mother said, about siblings." Lucas's heart jumped. "Yeah?" "I talked to Dr. Chen about it, about whether it would be safe after everything. She said as long as I wait another 6 months, make sure the remission holds, there's no medical reason I couldn't try." "And do you want to?" "Try." Victoria was quiet, considering. "A year ago, I would have said no, that I'd missed my window, that I wasn't mother material, that my life was complete as it was. But then I became Mia's mom, not biologically, but in every way that matters. And I realized I'm capable of this, of loving a child so much it terrifies me. You're an incredible mother. I'm learning to be. And I think," she turned to look at him, "I think I'd like to try. To give Mia a sibling, to build our family even bigger." Lucas pulled her close, overwhelmed with love for this woman who'd gone from proposing a clinical marriage to wanting to build a life so full it couldn't be managed or controlled. "Then let's try," he said. "When you're ready. When we're ready. I'm ready now, or at least I'm ready to be ready in 6 months." They talked late into the night about possibilities and fears and the beautiful uncertainty of trying to create life together. It wasn't about replacing what they'd lost or filling voids. It was about choosing more. More love, more chaos, more impossible joy. 6 months later, on a cold January morning, Victoria took a pregnancy test in their bathroom while Lucas waited outside the door with the kind of nervous energy he hadn't felt since Mia's birth. "Lucas?" Victoria's voice was small. He opened the door to find her sitting on the edge of the bathtub, the test in her trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. "It's positive," she whispered. Lucas dropped to his knees in front of her, hands on her thighs, looking up at this woman who'd beaten cancer and fear and every defense she'd ever built. "We're having a baby," he said, and his voice broke on the words. "We're having a baby," she repeated, then laughed through the tears. "What are we doing?" "Building a family, building a life, building everything I thought I'd lost." They told Mia that weekend, sitting her down with the seriousness the moment deserved. "So, sweetheart," Lucas started, "you know how you've been asking about a sibling?" Mia's eyes went wide. "Am I getting a brother or sister?" "In about 8 months, yes," Victoria said, her hand already resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Mia's shriek could probably be heard in Kentucky. She launched herself at both of them, talking a mile a minute about names and whether they could paint the baby's room blue or green or maybe rainbow and whether she could teach the baby about dinosaurs. "We'll figure all of that out together," Lucas promised, holding both his girls close. The pregnancy was harder than Victoria anticipated. Morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, exhaustion that no amount of coffee could fix. The constant anxiety that something would go wrong, that her body, which had already betrayed her once, would fail again. But Lucas was there for every moment, every doctor's appointment, every middle-of-the-night panic attack, every morning she couldn't keep food down. "I don't know how you did this with Rebecca," Victoria said one particularly rough day, curled on the couch with a bucket nearby. "I didn't really. She did it alone while I worked. I was present for the easy parts and absent for the hard ones." Lucas rubbed her back gently. "I'm not making that mistake twice." At work, Victoria had finally announced her pregnancy to the board, expecting resistance or concern about her ability to lead while managing both remission and pregnancy. Instead, Carmichael surprised her. "Congratulations, Victoria," he said, and he actually sounded genuine. "The firm is stronger with you leading it, and we'll support whatever you need to make this work." She'd almost cried in the boardroom. Mia took her role as big sister in training seriously. She read books about babies, asked Victoria approximately 800 questions about what it felt like to have a person growing inside you, drew pictures of their family that now included a tiny stick figure labeled Baby Bennett Hale. "That's the baby's name?" Victoria asked, studying the drawing. "Well, it has to have both your names," Mia said matter-of-factly. "Because you're both the parents." Lucas and Victoria exchanged a look. They hadn't discussed names yet, too superstitious to jinx anything. "Bennett Hale is pretty long," Lucas said carefully. "So? I'm Mia Rebecca Bennett, and that's long too. The baby can handle it." In the end, she was right. James Lucas Bennett Hale was born on a September morning after 14 hours of labor that Victoria handled with the same determined precision she applied to everything else. "I'm never doing this again," she gasped between contractions. "You said that 3 hours ago," Lucas reminded her, holding her hand while she squeezed hard enough to cut off circulation. "I'm saying it louder now." Louder. But when they placed their son in her arms, tiny, perfect, impossibly real, Victoria's expression transformed into something Lucas would remember for the rest of his life. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "I'm your mom, and I've been waiting so long to meet you." Mia met her brother that afternoon, climbing carefully onto the hospital bed to peer at him with intense curiosity. "He's so small," she said, touching one tiny fist with her finger. "You were this small once," Lucas told her. "Was I this cute?" "Cuter, actually." Mia considered this. Then she looked at Victoria. "Mom, thank you for my brother." Victoria's eyes filled with tears again. Hormones, exhaustion, overwhelming love. "Thank you for being such a good big sister. I'm going to teach him everything about dinosaurs and numbers and how to make pancakes and why purple is the best color. He's lucky to have you." They stayed in the hospital for 2 days, navigating the chaos of new parenthood with more experience than they'd had the first time, but just as much terror. James cried. He nursed. He slept in impossible positions that made Victoria nervous. And through it all, Lucas watched his wife become a mother for the second time and fell in love with her all over again. Home was chaos. Beautiful, exhausting chaos. Mia wanted to help with everything. Victoria was recovering from birth while managing a newborn. Lucas was trying to split himself between work, Mia, Victoria, and James, usually failing at all four simultaneously. But they figured it out. Victoria's mother's intuition kicked in. The same analytical precision she used in boardrooms now applied to feeding schedules and sleep training. Lucas learned to function on 4 hours of sleep. Mia became the world's most enthusiastic assistant, fetching diapers and singing to James when he cried. Rebecca sent flowers and a card congratulating them. She'd softened over the months, had even developed a tentative friendship with Victoria, built on their shared love for Mia. "It takes a village," she'd said when she came to meet James, holding him with practiced ease. "I'm glad Mia's village is so full of people who love her." 3 months after James's birth, Lucas found Victoria in the nursery at 2 a.m, rocking their son while tears ran down her face. "Hey," he whispered. "What's wrong?" "Is he okay?" "He's perfect." Victoria looked up, and her smile was radiant despite the tears. "I was just thinking about that night in my driveway, when I asked you to be my husband, when I was so sick and so scared and so convinced I'd die alone." Lucas sat on the floor beside the rocking chair, one hand on her knee. "I thought I was asking for a business arrangement," Victoria continued. "Someone to handle logistics and paperwork, someone to show up because it was contractually obligated. But Lucas, you gave me everything, a family, a daughter, a son, a love I didn't know existed." Her voice broke. "You saved my life, and I don't mean the cancer." "You saved mine first," Lucas said. "The morning after my divorce, when you handed me that portfolio and treated me like I was capable instead of broken, you gave me oxygen when I was drowning. We saved each other then. Yeah, we did." Victoria shifted James to one arm and reached down to take Lucas's hand. "Do you remember what I promised in our vows, that I'd choose you every day?" "I remember. I just want you to know that I'm still choosing you every single day, and I'll keep choosing you for the rest of my life." Lucas stood and kissed her, careful not to disturb their sleeping son. "Same, Victoria, for the rest of my life." They stood there in the dim nursery, their son between them, their daughter asleep down the hall, and let themselves believe in the impossible thing they'd built. 5 years later, Lucas stood in the backyard of their Green Hills house watching Mia, now 12 and impossibly grown up, teach James how to kick a soccer ball. Victoria sat beside him on the patio, her hand resting on her stomach where their third child was growing. 3 kids, she said, shaking her head. "The woman who didn't want children now has 3. Do you regret it?" "Not for a single second." She leaned into him. "Though I still maintain that pregnancy is terrible and someone should invent a better system." "You said that about James too." And I meant it then as well. Lucas laughed, pulling her closer. On the lawn, Mia scored a goal and James cheered, his 5-year-old voice carrying across the yard. Daddy, Mom, did you see? We saw, Victoria called back. Excellent form. Life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. Victoria still ran Alderidge Capital with the same brilliant precision, though she'd restructured her schedule to be home for dinner most nights. Lucas had been promoted to senior vice president, running his own division while maintaining clear boundaries from Victoria's direct oversight. Mia split time between their house and Rebecca's, comfortable in both, loved in both. The adults had figured out co-parenting with surprising grace, even celebrating holidays together occasionally. James was pure joy, wrapped in boundless energy, and his father's earnest determination to understand everything. And now there would be another. A daughter, the ultrasound had revealed. Victoria had cried when they'd found out, overwhelmed by the symmetry of their family. I never thought I could have this, she'd whispered in the technician's office. Any of this. Neither did I, Lucas had said. But we built it anyway. That night, after the kids were in bed, they sat on their back patio like they had so many times before, watching Nashville glitter in the distance. Do you ever think about that courthouse? Victoria asked. Where your first marriage ended? Sometimes. Do you think you'd change anything if you could go back? Lucas considered the question honestly. The divorce had been devastating. The months afterward had nearly broken him, but that brokenness had led him here, to this patio, this woman, this life. No, he said finally. I wouldn't change anything, because every terrible moment led me to you. Victoria turned to look at him, and in the dim light, she was exactly as beautiful as she'd been that first morning when she'd noticed his bare ring finger and handed him oxygen disguised as responsibility. You know what I learned, she said, from all of this? From cancer and marriage and becoming a mother? What? That the most broken version of yourself isn't the end of your story. It's just the chapter before you learn to build something new. She took his hand. You were broken when we met. I was dying. And somehow, we took all that brokenness and built a family, built a life, built love from logistics and partnership from desperation. Best decision I ever made, Lucas said, saying yes to you. Best decision I ever made was asking. They sat there as the stars came out, two people who'd married for practical reasons and stayed for impossible ones. Two people who'd learned that showing up was the foundation of everything else. Two people who'd discovered that love didn't have to start with passion to end up being real. Inside, their children slept. Mia with her glow-in-the-dark stars and her carefully organized bookshelf. James with his stuffed dinosaur collection and the nightlight that projected planets on his ceiling. And soon, a daughter who would complete their family in ways they hadn't known it needed completing. Thank you, Victoria whispered. For what? For staying, even when it was hard, even when I didn't know how to let you. She looked at him. For teaching me that being vulnerable doesn't mean being weak, that asking for help doesn't mean failing, that love isn't about control, it's about trust. Lucas pulled her close, his hand resting over hers on her stomach where their daughter grew. Thank you for asking me to be your husband, he said, for seeing something in me worth choosing when I couldn't see it myself. They sat there until the lights of Nashville blurred into stars, two people who'd started with a proposal in a driveway and ended up with everything they'd never known to want. The single dad who'd thought his life ended in a courthouse. The CEO who'd built an empire but never built a home. Both of them learning that sometimes the most impossible proposal leads to the most beautiful life. And somewhere between showing up and choosing each other and building a family from broken pieces, they'd discovered the truth that Rebecca had gotten wrong and Victoria had learned to believe. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about staying, every day, every moment, every impossible choice to stay. And Lucas Bennett and Victoria Hale had learned to stay so completely, so thoroughly, that their staying became the foundation on which everything else was built. A marriage that started as a contract and became a covenant. A partnership that started as logistics and became love. A family that started as necessity and became home. And as they sat there under the stars, their children sleeping safely inside, another life growing between them, they understood what they'd been too broken to see at the beginning. The best love stories don't start with certainty. They start with someone broken enough to ask and someone brave enough to stay.